Are you serious? Are you serious? Guys, we have breaking news. We have a Pentagon report warning that a threat by enemies of America could shoot U.S. satellites down with powerful lasers. For the past year, the United States has been throwing around the idea of establishing a space force to prepare it for the off-world warfare, or Star Wars. Yesterday, the public got a clear idea of just what kind of battles the nation expects might be on the horizon in satellite attacks by laser weapons from the ground. In other words, the real world is sounding more like Star Wars every day. The Pentagon has released a report challenging the security in space, in which a key claim is that Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are all in process of developing technologies they could use to attack the United States satellites. And according to the report, at least two of these nations, China and Russia, are likely pursuing laser weapons to disrupt, degrade, or even damage satellites and their sensors. Quote, China likely will field a ground-based laser weapon that can counter low-orbit space-based sensors by 2020, according to the report. And by the mid-late 2020s, it may field higher power systems that extend the threat to the structures of non-optical satellites. Russia, meanwhile, already has a land-based laser weapon the Pentagon believes is likely intended for an anti-satellite mission. Matter of fact, the nation is now reportedly developing an airborne anti-satellite laser weapon system to use against space-based missile defense sensors. So the importance of satellites to modern life, not just modern military operations, is nearly impossible to overstate. The device plays an integral role in our abilities to communicate with one another, navigate the world around us, and study important issues such as climate change and much more. If one nation did want to wreak havoc on another, taking out its satellites would certainly do the trick. So if the intel behind the Pentagon's new report is solid, it's imperative that the United States of America find ways to counter any laser threats to U.S. satellites, no matter how much they may sound like science fiction to us all. Folks, this takes me to Nikola Tesla. If you remember, he sold secret weapon laser guns to the Russians for $25,000. As a matter of fact, after he sold that preliminary information on how to make those, way back, guys, in 1931 or something like that, then he made a phone call to the United States government. He spoke to one of the top generals and said he was willing to give it to the U.S. as well. And he was setting up a meeting for the U.S. generals to come, and he was going to give them access to some preliminary information on laser guns, a laser weapon. But 2 days later, Tesla died, very mysteriously died, and then somebody went in and opened his safe and took all of his papers. We believe it was the United States of America that actually took the papers, and it may have been the United States that actually had something to do with the death of Tesla. But even if whether it was or not, the one thing for sure is if the United States got a hold of this documentation, then they would have the same info that the Russians would have had. But what if the United States isn't the ones that got it? What if the Russians had his phones tapped and it was the Russians that killed him took all the paperwork before the Americans could get their hands on it? That is one of the questions that nobody seems to be able to answer. But I'm just telling you, that actually happened. And here we are, 90 years later, talking about the very weapons that Tesla had already invented and designed, or at least had, in theory, had figured out how to do it. Plus a whole lot more. He had figured out how to create energy that could light up the whole world using atmospheric energy instead of creating, energy from coal and turbines or, other different sources. So anyway, here we are, electricity. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to get this to you. The Pentagon is warning. This report has just been released, and we're going to find out more about what's going on this. Now, you don't want to miss tonight's live broadcast. We're sorry that we didn't have our interview with Zev Parat. He had to cancel due to a death with some of his parishioners, so he had to reschedule. But tonight I will be back at 10 p.m. Eastern. This may be one of the most important programs I've ever done. We have information of what's been going on, the real story behind some of the military operations going on in Los Angeles. So don't miss tonight's live broadcast. Starts at 10 p.m. Eastern. Some really good information for you. Very interesting. I'll see you guys at 10 o'clock. Are you serious? Are you serious?